the entire office was silent, except for the laughter echoing across the room. Her manager stood at the head of the long conference table, his face twisted with mockery as he stared directly at her, pointing as if she were an object of amusement. "You?" He scoffed loudly, ensuring every ear in the room could hear. "You actually think you're capable of leading this project? You can't even speak up in meetings. You just sit there like a statue. Leadership? That's not for quiet people like you." Around the room, the snickers began, some loud, others muffled by hands covering mouths. But the message was clear. She was the joke, the quiet woman who dared to believe she was worthy of leadership. And yet, while the laughter grew louder, she sat still. Her face calm, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze steady. No anger, no tears, no words, only silence. But what they didn't know, what no one in that room could even begin to imagine, was that behind her silence a storm was quietly building. A plan was already in motion, a plan that would leave them all in shock, gasping for air, begging for mercy when it was too late. It had begun months earlier, long before this humiliating moment. She had always been the quiet one, Maya, a woman who preferred to listen rather than speak, to observe rather than shout, to strategize rather than show off. In an office culture that rewarded loud voices and aggressive self-promotion, Maya was often invisible. Her contributions went unnoticed, her dedication overlooked, but she wasn't naive. She knew how they saw her, as soft, passive, weak. She remembered every comment. "Oh, Maya, she's too timid for management. She's good at the small stuff, but she doesn't have the guts for leadership. She'll never make it past assistant-level work." And yet, in her quiet way, she kept showing up. She kept doing the work, and doing it better than anyone else. When the company announced its biggest project yet, one that could make or break their future, Maya poured herself into it. She worked late nights, poring over reports, analyzing every risk, designing strategies that could drive results beyond expectations. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because she believed in the project, because she believed in herself. But when the time came to select a leader for the project, Mr. Collins didn't even glance her way. Instead, he gave the role to Daniel. Daniel, the man who spoke loudly but thought little. Daniel, the man who spent more time talking than working, who basked in attention but stumbled in execution. And just like that, all of Maya's efforts were handed over to him, and she was expected to remain silent. Worse still, Mr. Collins didn't just ignore her. He made a show of it, calling her out publicly, ridiculing her in front of her peers, making sure everyone knew just how little he thought of her. But Maya didn't react. She sat through it all, absorbing every word, every laugh, every smug look, because what no one knew was that Maya was playing the long game. While they laughed, she was already planning. The days that followed were difficult. She could feel the weight of their whispers trailing behind her everywhere she went. "She's too soft for this place. She should just quit already. Maybe she's not cut out for corporate life." In the break room, in the hallways, even in the elevator, the glances, the smirks, the barely concealed gossip followed her like shadows. And yet, she stayed silent. But inside, her mind was sharp, focused, unwavering. At home, while others celebrated happy hours and weekends off, Maya worked. She read books on leadership, strategy, and negotiation. She studied case studies of successful women who had quietly risen to power. She practiced speaking out loud, recording herself, refining her tone, her words, her presence. Night after night, she sat alone in her small apartment, surrounded by books, notes, and glowing laptop screens. And with every passing day, her plan took clearer shape. She wasn't going to fight them in the way they expected. She wasn't going to argue or shout back in meetings. She was going to outthink them, quietly, strategically, ruthlessly. And when the time was right, she would strike. Weeks passed. Under Daniel's leadership, the project began to fall apart. Deadlines were missed. Budgets were overspent. Clients grew restless, demanding answers. Daniel panicked. Mr. Collins grew nervous. But still, No one asked Maya for her thoughts. And Maya? She simply watched, waited, and prepared. She kept track of every failure. She documented every risk that had been ignored. She quietly reached out to former colleagues, industry connections, even potential investors. Behind the scenes, she was building something no one could see. A solution that could not only rescue the project, but also transform the company's future. And no one suspected a thing. Then the inevitable happened. The company's largest client issued an ultimatum: fix the problems immediately or lose the contract. The board called for an emergency meeting to decide the project's fate, and possibly the fate of several high-level employees. Everyone in the office was terrified, but Maya was calm. She knew her moment had finally arrived. She approached Mr. Collins, standing at his office door as he buried his face in his hands. "I can save this project," she said, her voice quiet but firm. He laughed in her face. "Save it?" he sneered. "You? After everything? You should be grateful we even let you stay here." But Maya didn't argue. She simply turned and walked away, a knowing smile playing at the corner of her lips, because she knew, in just a few days, everything would change. The countdown had begun. 5 days until the board meeting. Each day, the tension in the office grew heavier. Daniel became desperate, scrambling to cover his mistakes, begging for help behind closed doors. Mr. Collins grew colder, snapping at employees, barking orders without direction. But Maya moved silently. Each night she refined her proposal. She gathered internal data, cross-checked financial reports, ran simulations. She even secured letters of intent from investors willing to back her strategy, investors who had once doubted the company but now believed in her vision. She rehearsed her presentation over and over, perfecting every word, every pause, every slide. She wasn't preparing to ask for approval. She was preparing to take control. And then the day arrived. The boardroom was filled with the highest-ranking executives, their faces drawn and tense. Daniel sat near the front, visibly sweating. Mr. Collins kept his eyes on the table, clearly aware of the storm heading his way. The chairman cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he said slowly, "we've received a detailed proposal from an unexpected source, Maya." Gasps echoed across the room. Heads turned, eyes widened. Maya rose from her seat, walking slowly, confidently, to the front of the room. She plugged in her presentation, her hands steady, her expression serene. And then she began to speak. Her voice was calm but carried power. She laid out every issue the project faced, backed by hard evidence, numbers, and facts. She explained exactly how each problem had been allowed to grow unchecked under Daniel's leadership. She detailed her recovery plan, every step, every contingency, every projected outcome. And then she delivered the final blow. She revealed the letters of intent from new investors who were ready to not only save the project, but to expand it far beyond its original scope. Her plan wasn't just a fix, it was a revolution. The room erupted into stunned silence. Not a single question was raised, because every answer had already been anticipated and solved. The board voted unanimously. Effective immediately, Maya was appointed Director of Strategy. Daniel was removed from his role. Mr. Collins was demoted and placed under investigation. And as Maya sat back down, a small, knowing smile crossed her face. Her silence had spoken louder than any outburst ever could. She had played the long game, and she had won. Her story is a reminder to every woman and every person who has ever been silenced, overlooked, or underestimated. Silence isn't weakness. It's power, patience, and precision. Because when the quiet ones finally speak, the world has no choice but to listen. Now, I ask you, if you were in Maya's place, what would you have done? Would you have remained silent? Would you have walked away? Or would you have waited and planned, just like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, there's another one that's even more shocking, about a woman who took back everything she lost and left everyone speechless. Watch it now.